if Philly wants any chance to beat Boston, James Harden has to average 20 to 25, maybe more. And what I've seen from James Harden is a phenomenal first half in game one, and that's really it. He had 8 points in game two. And listen, the playmaking is, of course, going to be there. But if James Harden is not going to be a scorer, and of course, defensively, we know that he is not going to give you really anything on that side of the ball, it's going to be extremely difficult for Philly to get past Boston, no matter how great Joel Embiid is. I really think they need Harden to be that second elite scorer next to him. Maxey, of course, you could trust him in moments, but I really think it has to be Harden. And then the last game I want to touch on is this Lakers-Grizzlies one. Drew obviously gave his thoughts. I just want to quickly share mine because, Drew told me to stop talking about the Lakers because I don't know what I'm talking about. And my, pre-series analysis was right. You never know what you're going to get from the Lakers. I don't know if you consistently trust them for 48 minutes in a 7-game series. I know there's stats out there that show the Grizzlies are better without Ja Morant over these last 2 years, and their win-loss percentage might reflect that. But the fact that you have this Grizzlies team who might be playing with more energy without Ja Morant, he's their best player. And this was a time for the Lakers to go into Memphis, take a 2-0 lead, and really take control of the series going back to LA. But we saw them in the first half. They didn't show up. They had a great third quarter, cut the lead to 6 points. Fourth quarter kind of had some good minutes and bad minutes there. Ultimately ended up losing the game. But this is kind of the story of the Lakers all season long. They could look great for a half. They could look great for a game, even in that game one, which was really mostly the second half. But then we have a follow-up in this game where the first half, they come out flat. The Grizzlies were able to get to the paint. And I really think the third quarter, the Grizzlies were settling for a lot of jump shots and three-pointers, which allowed the Lakers to get in transition and fast break and cut that lead down. And they were missing a lot of point-blank layups as well. Then that fourth quarter maybe got a couple calls go their way for the Grizzlies. But overall, I don't think we saw the 48 minutes of, top-end basketball you need to see out of the Lakers. I still think the Lakers win the series because talent-wise, without Ja Morant, I think there's a gap there, especially the way Rui played these last 2 games. We know Austin Reeves could have those type of games as well. But I think there's just a talent gap right now with AD and LeBron being that top end and the Grizzlies really not having anybody. Of course, Jaren Jackson is great, but not quite at that level.
By the way, where's Riv? Where'd he go?
Riv is on his way to South Carolina. I believe he's on a road trip. So that's why he didn't show up. I know that Riv wasn't going to show up after John Conchar got minutes.
No, it wasn't. Of course not. You saw that block, fellas. So Dehls, you made a great point. We talk often about Chris Paul being cooked, right? Chris Paul this year's made only 12 layups. When are we going to talk about James Harden being cooked? The guy can't score inside the arc.
Oof.
Like, I know he's a great playmaker, but he's got one of the easiest jobs in the league. He's on a silver platter, just diming up Joel Embiid in one pick and roll after another. He's just knocking down one mid-range J after another. James Harden's made 2 2-pointers in the series, and he can't create separation. So while in that Philadelphia series, I don't know if they'd have a Joel Embiid answer. The Celtics would have a James Harden answer because with how well Derek White's playing, this is going to lead into my Hawks point. Man, we have to talk about Trey Young, guys. The guy in his last 7 playoff games is shooting 33% from the field. For his career in the playoffs, he's a 28% shooter. I would rather have Darius Garland than Trey Young on my team for 4 reasons. Number 1, Garland's clearly better shot maker, clearly better shooter. Number 2, he's the clearly better off-ball player. Trey Young is a statue off the ball. It's like he's paralyzed. He literally does not move. Number 3, defensively, Trey Young is probably the biggest wallflower in the NBA. I mean, have you guys ever seen him in transition? When you're the point guard, you're the last guy back, and he may as well not exist because he just goes to the steal at half court every time. He misses, and it's a fast break layup. And then number 4, this Hawks team, to be competitive in the playoffs, needs him to be one of the 2 best players in the series. Last year, he was not even the best player in his team. That might have been DeAndre Hunter. This year, he might not be the second best player in his team. He's shooting like shit. He's averaging 6 turnovers. We've gotten to a point where Trey Young, a boiling point, right? Where mentally he has not matured his game. Off the ball, defensively, as a leader, and it shows because that rubs off on all of his teammates that are shooting poorly as well. He is the straw that stirs the drink as an undersized guard. But the more we watch Atlanta, the more we see who he truly is. There's no excuses. He's got a top 5 coach in Quinn Snyder. DeJounte Murray shooting the lights out. When he's off the floor, he's got a lot of really good young wings. Jalen Johnson's going to be really good. DeAndre Hunter, when he's clicking, he's a good player. But Atlanta just misses a leader and a guard. And I mean, just imagine if James Harden shrunk 5 inches and it was 50 pounds lighter. That would be Trey Young. That would be him.
Oh my
Can I ask you a question, John? And I don't know if you hold similar beliefs as me and Joel, but are we gonna pretend like Garland didn't have his moment in the sun and he shrunk against Trey Young last year?
in
Are
his
we
first
also
playoff game
are
with
we
no
okay,
support?
I'm asking
Yeah,
you a
that's
question.
fair enough.
What
He
did
was
Trey
also in
Young
his
do in
second or
his
third season.
What did Trey
but-
Young do in his first playoff experience?
Well, he was cooking
in the
Alfred Payton. Congrats.
the
Alfred
in the
Payton's no longer
Garden?
in the league.
In the Garden, he put
Let's
on
talk
an
about the
absolute show.
Philadelphia series.
Yeah,
In that Philly
talk about it.
series, his best game was on Danny Green, who can't move laterally, in all due respect. And then in Game 7, it wasn't Trey Young leading the Hawks to the finals. He shot 5 of 23 in Game 7. It was Kevin Huerter and Ben Simmons leading the Hawks to the finals. I know Trey Young ended his career rim protecting on Ben Simmons, but I think that playoff run was slightly overrated too in some ways because they had an easy run and really good matchups. So look,
I agree with that.
I'm not disagreeing with
I
you
understand
there.
where you're coming from, where Darius Garland in his playing game didn't play well.
And he's also playing off of Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah. And you know what he's doing? He's balling out. He just had
He
one
had
of the
a
best
he
games
had a
all
great
season
game
long I've seen from
too.
a point guard.
He had a great game
defends with
too.
energy.
Game 1, he was okay.
He was putting
Game
RJ
1,
in straight jacket.
the reason why the Cavs lost was because Garland was not more dominant and effective.
I
Game
get
2,
what
yes,
He
you're
was great
way
against
different.
the Nets, though, in the first playing
But
game.
what-
He
I don't want to
that was
harp
over.
on this Trey Young point because
I don't either.
He
Trey
stinks in the
Young-
playoffs.
I
He's horrible.
apologize.
And it shows your best player can't be a point guard on a championship caliber team. And Trey Young is the exact example of that.
Outside
Where we
of Steph
asked the
Curry.
question, Riv was asking this question, can Trey Young be the best player on a championship team? Hell no. In 2021, that was the first and only chance he would ever have as being the best on a championship team because of all the injuries. That was the Nets year. They got banged up. Giannis was banged up in that round at the end of it against the Hawks. And we said to ourselves, okay, if Cam Reddish develops into Paul George, yeah, they go at the finals, but Paul George, top 15 player. And that never happened. So, yeah, I mean, I'm done with Trey Young. I'm done defending him. I did earlier on in the season. Man, the guy's a floor raiser that just doesn't translate in the playoffs. He can't get to the rim. He's reliant on free throws. He's not a good shot maker. Like, his shot selection is piss poor. And it's made that Celtics series borderline unwatchable just because he's been so
DeJounte was hooping.
Now listen, John.
He's off the floor.
I'm not gonna rebuttal your Trey Young points. I agree with most of them, and I think I'd rather Darius Garland at this point in time too. But you've tried to go on this huge rant about Trey Young to take away from what you said about James Harden, which I think is ridiculous, and it's honestly one of the worst things you've ever said about James Harden. James Harden has one bad game too, and now all of a sudden we're talking about if he's cooked or not. There's somebody who just led the league in assists, and you might think that these are easy assists. I mean, you tend to criticize a lot of great passes. You criticize John Stockton. You criticize everybody not named Chris Paul when it comes to assists. I don't know what's wrong with
Jokic.
you. James Harden, this the second time he's led the league in assists, and when you talk about the amount of points he's scoring with the amount of shots he's taking, he's having one of his most efficient seasons this year. He may not be the same player he was a couple years ago, but to say that he's cooked is simply ridiculous. He can still get to the basket, although not on an elite or great level. It's good enough. And what Philly needs from James Harden is spacing. Tyrese Maxey's supposed to ascend into that player that can attack the defense and create rim pressure. James Harden is shooting 40% from 3 this year. James Harden is doing his job just fine. James Harden and Joel Embiid had the most efficient pick and roll this year. So to act like James Harden is just this shell of himself, like he's Chris Paul right now, it's just ridiculous.
Joel, what did you do last year in the playoffs? When it mattered.
He was terrible. He was terrible in game 2.
Off an
he was
injury?
terrible in game 2.
In game 7. Also,
James Harden. But okay, can we add context to this though? James Harden last year, it was a season where he was coming off an offseason where he wasn't able to work out. He was rehabilitating his hamstring. So the entire season, he was a complete shell of himself. There's a reason why he came into this season and he looked like an all-NBA performer. The reason is because he was able to train properly in the offseason. And nobody will disagree that James Harden this year has been an all-star, has been a borderline all-NBA performer. The only reason he's not going to make an all-NBA team this year is because there's just so much talent across the league at the guard position, but he's been that good.
I don't think it's about regular season, though, Joel. Like, we understand he's a top 25 player. In the playoffs, when you're going up against a Boston that can switch 4 or 5 different guys onto you, will James Harden show up? I don't think you believe he will.
Well,
and also,
a question, that's a serious question. And listen, Boston, I think we have to give them a respect too.
Oh,
Marcus
really?
Smart, Derek White, point of attack defenders that are great defensively. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, of course, they do have bodies to throw at James Harden. And that's going to be a big task for James Harden. But let's not act like it's not the same team that last year locked up KD and Kyrie. You calling Kyrie washed? You calling KD washed? So if Harden doesn't play well, he's washed? Doesn't make sense. James Harden literally in game 1 had 23 points and 13 assists. He has a bad game 2. All of a sudden, he's washed. Come on.
Yeah,
just like Chris Paul, he's
reliant
on shot making.
Not look the same as the
13 assists, 23 and 13
assists, and he
can't score inside the arc. And
it's also both of these games were double-digit wins. So let's not overanalyze this. Yes, we can say that James Harden needs to be better.
In game 2, it was like an 8-9 point game at halftime in game 1.
Maxey did his thing in game 2. I know what you're saying. Well, game 1 it was ugly. Game 1 was ugly. Game 2,
you're basically
making.
John, you're making your analysis on James Harden being washed based off a series that didn't happen yet, and based off the information, and based off the information that if James Harden goes to the second round and doesn't play good against Boston, he's washed. So does that make Kevin Durant washed? I'm just asking because the past 2 times, last year in the playoffs, he was not good. Does that make Kyrie washed, who historically for the last couple of years has not been very good in the playoffs?
There's a difference. It's that James Harden, the assist totals are there, and the shot making will always be there. But I'm talking about getting to the rim and scoring inside the arc. In the playoffs, you got to be able to do that. And while he made 1 million threes in game 1, because they're all helping off of Embiid, all helping off him to guard Embiid, doubles and triples. And so, yeah, when he's making shots, he's on. But what happens when he's not making shots? But I also want to clear up one thing. I said a point guard can't be the best player on a championship team. Now, obviously, Isaiah Thomas and Steph Curry have both done that. Those would be the 2 exceptions. Steph Curry, top 10 player of all time, and Isaiah Thomas played 40 years ago. Or 30 years ago. So I just want to clear that up. But generally, it's hard for a point guard historically to win.
Well, we know that that's an anomaly. I think that Trey Young, given the right situation, could do something. I feel like the only thing I disagree with your Trey Young rant is the fact that you try to prop up this Atlanta roster like it's above mid. This Atlanta roster is mid. You're talking about DeAndre Hunter as this. Oh yeah, they got DeAndre Hunter. He's one of the most unreliable players in the NBA. This season, he stayed fairly healthy. Previous years, he was not healthy.
Doesn't it say
no spacing on that team either?
Doesn't it say something on this mid roster for 2 straight playoff series? Trey Young has not been the best player in the playoffs.